As we stand at the threshold of the 19th century, the Lewis and Clark expedition emerges as a pivotal moment in American history, a daring quest that would forever alter the trajectory of a nation and reshape the contours of the continent. This epic journey, born from Thomas Jefferson's vision of Western expansion, would test the mettle of its leaders, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, as they navigated treacherous landscapes, forged unlikely alliances, and unraveled the secrets of the uncharted West. Join me on a thrilling odyssey that will take us from the mighty Missouri River to the crashing waves of the Pacific Ocean, as we embark on an unforgettable adventure that will redefine the very fabric of America's identity and ignite a sense of wonder that still echoes through the ages. As the 19th century dawned, Thomas Jefferson's vision of Western expansion began to take shape, fueled by an insatiable curiosity about the vast expanse of territory beyond the Appalachian Mountains. In 1801, Jefferson, now President of the United States, dispatched Robert Livingston to France to negotiate the purchase of New Orleans, a strategic port city that controlled access to the Mississippi River and, by extension, the entire western frontier. This move was a calculated gamble, driven by Jefferson's conviction that the young American nation needed to secure its economic and territorial future by expanding westward. The following year, in 1802, Jefferson's diplomatic efforts bore fruit when France, facing financial strain and military setbacks, offered to sell not just New Orleans, but the entire Louisiana Territory to the United States. This staggering proposal, which would more than double the size of the American nation, sent shockwaves through the corridors of power in Washington. The Louisiana Purchase, as it came to be known, was a masterstroke of diplomacy, one that would forever alter the trajectory of American history. For $15 million, the United States acquired approximately 828,000 square miles of land, a vast domain that stretched from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains and from the Gulf of Mexico to the Canadian border. As Jefferson's administration grappled with the implications of this monumental acquisition, the president's mind turned to the scientific, commercial, and diplomatic potential of the new territory. He envisioned an expedition that would traverse the western wilderness, mapping the terrain, collecting scientific data, and establishing trade relationships with Native American tribes. This bold initiative would not only expand American knowledge of the continent, but also demonstrate the young nation's commitment to exploration and discovery. With these goals in mind, Jefferson set about selecting the ideal leaders for this perilous endeavor. In the summer of 1802, Jefferson's thoughts turned to Meriwether Lewis, a young Army officer who had served as his personal secretary since 1801. Lewis, with his extensive military experience, cartographic skills, and passion for natural history, seemed the perfect candidate to lead the expedition. To complement Lewis's skills, Jefferson chose William Clark, a seasoned soldier and frontiersman who had fought alongside Lewis in the Indian Wars. Together, these two men would form an unstoppable partnership, one that would propel them into the annals of American history. As the planning phase gained momentum, Jefferson and his advisors worked tirelessly to assemble the Corps of Discovery, a hand-picked team of soldiers, scientists, and interpreters who would accompany Lewis and Clark on their epic journey. The expedition's budget, a modest $2,500, was approved by Congress in February 1803, and the necessary equipment, including boats, firearms, and scientific instruments, began to arrive in Pittsburgh, the designated departure point. With the Corps of Discovery taking shape, Lewis and Clark set about recruiting additional members, including George Drouillard, a skilled hunter and interpreter, and York, Clark's enslaved African-American servant who would play a crucial role in the expedition's success. As the winter of 1803 to 1804 slowly receded, Lewis and Clark prepared to embark on the most daunting leg of their journey, the ascent up the Missouri River. On May 14, 1804, the Corps of Discovery bid farewell to Camp Du Bois, their winter quarters near present-day Hartford, Illinois, and set off into the unknown. The expedition's flotilla, consisting of a 55-foot keelboat and two smaller pirogues, carried 33 people, including the captains, soldiers, scientists, interpreters, and York, Clark's enslaved servant. As they navigated the Missouri's treacherous currents, the Corps encountered their first Native American nations. On May 25, they met with a group of Otoe and Missouri Indians near present-day Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. The encounter was peaceful, with the Native Americans offering gifts of food and information about the region's geography. Lewis and Clark took careful note of these interactions, recognizing that building alliances with indigenous peoples would be crucial to their success. River travel proved arduous, with the expedition facing numerous challenges, including swollen currents, submerged logs, and treacherous sandbars. The daily routine was grueling, with the men rising before dawn to break camp, loading the boats, and embarking on the day's journey. Lewis and Clark took turns navigating the keelboat, using their knowledge of astronomy and cartography to chart their course. The soldiers and interpreters worked tirelessly to row, hunt, and gather food, while the scientists, including Lewis, who had a passion for natural history, collected specimens and made observations about the region's geology, flora, and fauna. Discipline and hierarchy were essential components of expedition life. Lewis and Clark maintained a strict chain of command, with Sergeants Charles Floyd and Patrick Gass overseeing the enlisted men. The captains also established a system of rewards and punishments to maintain order and motivate their crew. Despite these efforts, tensions arose, particularly between the soldiers and the expedition's French-Canadian interpreter, Georges Drouillard, who sometimes clashed with the men over issues of authority and cultural differences. Tragedy struck on August 20, 1804, when Sergeant Charles Floyd died suddenly, likely due to a ruptured appendix or other internal ailment. The Corps was devastated by the loss of their comrade, whom they buried on a bluff overlooking the Missouri River near present-day Sioux City, Iowa. Lewis and Clark eulogized Floyd in their journals, praising his bravery, loyalty, and dedication to the expedition. The sergeant's death served as a poignant reminder of the risks and uncertainties that lay ahead as the Corps of Discovery continued its journey into the heart of the American wilderness. As the days shortened and the temperatures dropped, Lewis and Clark knew they had to establish winter quarters, a place to rest, repair, and replenish their supplies before pushing further west. On November 2, 1804, the Corps of Discovery arrived at the confluence of the Missouri and Knife Rivers in present-day North Dakota, where they would spend the winter of 1804-1805. The captains chose a site near the villages of the Mandan and Hidatsa tribes, with whom they hoped to establish friendly relations and gain valuable knowledge about the region. The expedition constructed Fort Mandan, a sturdy wooden fortification that would serve as their base for the next 5 months. The fort's design was influenced by the French-Canadian style, with vertical pickets and a gate made from cottonwood trees. As the men worked on building the fort, they also began to interact with the local Native American tribes, learning about their customs, traditions, and ways of life. Lewis and Clark were particularly interested in establishing trade relationships and gathering information about the geography and climate of the western regions. One of the most significant events of the winter occurred on November 4, 1804, when Toussaint Charbonneau, a French-Canadian trader, arrived at Fort Mandan with his Shoshone wife, Sacagawea, and their infant son, Jean-Baptiste. Sacagawea, who had been captured by the Hidatsa as a child and sold to Charbonneau, would prove to be an invaluable asset to the expedition, serving as a translator and guide in the regions west of the Continental Divide. Lewis and Clark were impressed by her knowledge of the terrain, her linguistic skills, and her familiarity with the Native American tribes they would encounter on their journey. As winter set in, the Corps of Discovery focused on survival strategies, learning from the Mandan and Hidatsa how to adapt to the harsh climate and make the most of the available resources. They hunted buffalo, deer, and other game, and learned how to prepare traditional Native American dishes such as roasted corn and dried meat. The men also worked on repairing their equipment, making new clothing, and crafting tools from available materials. Lewis and Clark took advantage of the downtime to record their observations, collect botanical specimens, and make detailed maps of the region. Despite the challenges of living in close quarters with limited supplies, the expedition maintained a sense of camaraderie and purpose. The men entertained themselves with music, storytelling, and games, while Lewis and Clark worked on planning the next phase of their journey. They knew that the push west would be even more daunting than their ascent up the Missouri River, but they were determined to reach the Pacific Ocean and fulfill the objectives of their mission. As the winter of 1804 to 1805 drew to a close, Lewis and Clark began making preparations for the next phase of their journey, knowing that the push west would be even more daunting than their ascent up the Missouri River. On April 7, 1805, the Corps of Discovery set out from Fort Mandan, eager to traverse the Great Plains ecosystem which stretched out before them like an endless sea of grass. The men were accompanied by Sacagawea, her husband Toussaint Charbonneau, and their infant son, Jean-Baptiste, who had become an integral part of the expedition. As they traveled through the rolling hills and prairies of present-day North Dakota and Montana, the Corps encountered vast herds of buffalo, antelope, and deer, which provided them with a steady supply of food. However, the abundance of game was offset by the scarcity of water, and the men often had to go without drinking water for hours at a time. The dry air and relentless sun also took its toll on their skin and eyes, causing discomfort and fatigue. On July 26, 1805, the expedition arrived at the mouth of the Marias River, where they encountered a band of Shoshone Indians. Sacagawea, who was herself a Shoshone, played a crucial role in facilitating communication between the two groups, and her presence helped to ease tensions. The Shoshone were initially wary of the strangers, but eventually they began to trade with them, exchanging horses for guns, ammunition, and other goods. Lewis and Clark were eager to acquire horses, which would enable them to traverse the rugged terrain ahead, and they eventually obtained several fine animals from the Shoshone. With their new mounts, the Corps set out to cross the Continental Divide, a formidable barrier that separated the Great Plains from the Rocky Mountains. The terrain grew increasingly difficult, with steep slopes, rocky outcroppings, and fast-flowing streams. The men had to navigate treacherous mountain paths, often on foot, as they led their horses through narrow defiles and over slippery rocks. The air grew cooler and thinner, and the expedition faced severe weather conditions, including hailstorms, thunderstorms, and freezing temperatures. As they climbed higher, the Corps encountered severe hunger and physical exhaustion. The men were forced to subsist on a meager diet of dried meat, berries, and roots, which left them weak and lethargic. Their bodies began to break down under the strain, with many suffering from fatigue, injuries, and illnesses. Lewis and Clark faced significant leadership challenges as they struggled to maintain group cohesion and morale in the face of adversity. As the Corps of Discovery emerged from the Rocky Mountains, they entered the Columbia River system, a vast network of waterways that would guide them to the Pacific Ocean. On October 16, 1805, they arrived at the confluence of the Clearwater and Snake Rivers, where they encountered a band of Nez Perce Indians. The Nez Perce were friendly and welcoming, providing the expedition with food and shelter, as well as crucial guidance on navigating the treacherous waters ahead. Sacagawea, who had played a vital role in facilitating communication with the Shoshone, once again proved instrumental in establishing relations with the Nez Perce, helping to secure their assistance in portaging around the river's numerous rapids and waterfalls. As they descended the Columbia River, the Corps encountered a diverse array of tribes, each with their own distinct culture and traditions. They met with the Walla Walla, who offered them hospitality and traded goods, as well as the Yakima, who were more wary of the strangers, but eventually warmed to their presence. The expedition's encounters with these tribes not only facilitated their progress, but also provided valuable opportunities for cultural exchange and learning. Lewis and Clark took careful note of the region's flora and fauna, documenting the unique characteristics of the plants and animals they encountered, from the towering conifers to the abundant salmon and sturgeon. However, the journey was far from easy, as the Corps faced numerous environmental hardships and weather extremes. The Columbia River proved a formidable obstacle, with powerful currents and massive waves that threatened to capsize their canoes at every turn. The men had to navigate through icy rain and snow, often shivering with cold and wet to the bone. On November 2, 1805, they encountered a severe storm that forced them to take shelter on the riverbank, where they huddled together for warmth, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they were nearing their goal. Finally, on November 7, 1805, the Corps of Discovery reached the Pacific Ocean, achieving a milestone that had been the driving force behind their journey. As they stood on the windswept beach, gazing out at the endless expanse of water, Lewis and Clark felt an overwhelming sense of pride and accomplishment. They knew that their expedition had opened up new possibilities for trade, exploration, and settlement, paving the way for future generations to follow in their footsteps. The significance of their achievement was not lost on them, as they realized that they had completed a journey that would change the course of American history. As the Corps of Discovery stood on the windswept beach, gazing out at the endless expanse of water, they knew that their journey was far from over. The winter of 1805-1806 would prove to be a challenging and transformative period for the expedition, as they established Fort Clatsop, a makeshift settlement near the mouth of the Columbia River. The fort, named after the local Clatsop tribe, would serve as their base of operations for the next several months, providing a much-needed respite from the arduous journey. Life at Fort Clatsop was marked by hard labor and dedication, as the men worked tirelessly to construct and maintain their new quarters. The fort's wooden frame was built using local materials, with the men felling trees and notching logs to create a sturdy structure that would protect them from the harsh coastal weather. Meanwhile, others focused on hunting and gathering food, with Lewis and Clark leading expeditions to procure salted elk meat, roots, and berries to sustain them through the winter. Despite their best efforts, trade proved to be a significant challenge during this period. The local tribes, while friendly, were not as eager to engage in commerce as the expedition had hoped. The men found themselves struggling to acquire essential goods, such as food and warm clothing, which led to morale challenges within the group. Illness also began to take its toll, with several members of the party falling prey to diseases such as dysentery and rheumatism. In the midst of these challenges, Lewis and Clark continued to prioritize scientific observations and record-keeping. They spent countless hours documenting the unique flora and fauna of the region, from the towering spruce trees to the abundant marine life in the Columbia River. The journals they kept during this period would later prove invaluable to scientists and historians, providing a detailed and intimate portrait of the Pacific Northwest's natural history. Interactions with coastal native nations were also a significant aspect of life at Fort Clatsop. The expedition formed close relationships with the Clatsop and Chinook tribes, who provided them with crucial guidance on navigating the local environment and accessing essential resources. Lewis and Clark were particularly fascinated by the region's rich cultural heritage, and they spent many hours learning about the traditions and customs of the native peoples they encountered. As the winter wore on, however, it became increasingly clear that the expedition would need to begin planning their return journey east. The men had accomplished their primary objective, reaching the Pacific Ocean, and now faced the daunting task of retracing their steps across the continent. Lewis and Clark began to discuss the logistics of their return, weighing the pros and cons of different routes and considering the challenges they would face along the way. As the winter of 1805-1806 drew to a close, Lewis and Clark began to prepare for their journey home, aware that the return trip would be just as challenging as their westward journey had been. On March 23, 1806, they set out from Fort Clatsop, leaving behind the makeshift settlement that had been their home for several months. The expedition was divided into two groups, with Lewis leading a party to explore the Marias River and Clark leading another to follow the Yellowstone River. This division allowed them to gather more information about the region's geography and Native American tribes, while also increasing their chances of finding a more direct route back to the Missouri River. Lewis's party faced significant challenges as they navigated the treacherous terrain of the Rocky Mountains, including steep cliffs, raging rivers, and unpredictable weather. On April 7, 1806, they encountered a group of Blackfeet warriors, who were initially hostile but eventually calmed down after Lewis and his men demonstrated their military strength. This encounter highlights the complexities of Native American diplomacy during this period, as Lewis and Clark had to balance their desire to gather information with the need to protect themselves from potential threats. Meanwhile, Clark's party was exploring the Yellowstone River, which they found to be a more direct route back to the Missouri River. On April 12, 1806, they encountered a group of Crow warriors who were friendly and provided them with valuable information about the region's geography and Native American tribes. This encounter demonstrates the importance of building alliances with Native American tribes, as Clark's party was able to gather crucial information that would aid their journey home. As the two parties continued on their separate journeys, they began to reunite in late April 1806. On April 25, Lewis and Clark met up again at the confluence of the Yellowstone and Missouri rivers, where they held a final diplomatic council with the Native American tribes of the region. This council was significant, as it marked the end of their westward journey and the beginning of their return trip. The council also provided an opportunity for Lewis and Clark to reflect on their experiences and gather their thoughts before embarking on the long journey home. With their parties reunited, Lewis and Clark began their descent down the Missouri River, which proved to be a challenging but ultimately successful journey. On September 23, 1806, they arrived back in St. Louis, where they were greeted as heroes by the public. The news of their successful journey spread quickly, and they were hailed as pioneers who had opened up new possibilities for trade, exploration, and settlement. As they disembarked from their boats, Lewis and Clark were met with cheers and applause, marking the end of an epic journey that would change the course of American history. As Lewis and Clark returned to St. Louis, they brought with them a wealth of information about the Western Territories, including detailed maps, journals, and scientific observations. The publication of their journals, which began in 1807, sent shockwaves throughout the scientific community, providing a comprehensive account of the region's geography, geology, and native inhabitants. The journals included meticulous descriptions of the plants, animals, and landscapes they encountered, as well as detailed maps that helped to redefine the boundaries of the United States. The impact on American science and geography was profound, as Lewis and Clark's findings challenged existing theories about the Western Territories and sparked a new wave of interest in exploration and discovery. The expedition's data on the region's geology, botany, and zoology helped to lay the foundations for future scientific research, while their maps and descriptions of Native American tribes and cultures provided valuable insights into the complexities of indigenous societies. As news of the expedition's success spread, it accelerated the pace of westward expansion, as thousands of settlers, traders, and explorers began to pour into the Western Territories. The Lewis and Clark expedition had demonstrated that a transcontinental journey was possible, and their maps and journals provided a blueprint for future travelers. The consequences for Native American nations were devastating, however, as the influx of new arrivals disrupted traditional ways of life, led to the displacement of native populations, and introduced diseases that decimated indigenous communities. The legacy of the Lewis and Clark expedition began to take shape in the years following their return, as their journey was mythologized and romanticized in popular culture. The expedition's place in U.S. history was cemented through a series of commemorative events, publications, and artworks, which helped to solidify their status as national heroes. The myth of the Corps of Discovery, a term coined by Lewis himself, took hold, portraying the expedition as a brave and daring endeavor that had opened up the American West to settlement and exploration. As the years passed, however, a more nuanced understanding of the expedition's consequences began to emerge. Historians and scholars began to re-examine the expedition's impact on Native American nations, highlighting the devastating effects of displacement, disease, and violence. The legacy of Lewis and Clark became increasingly complex as their achievements were weighed against the costs of westward expansion. By the 1820s, the United States had begun to expand its territories through a series of treaties, purchases, and conquests, setting the stage for the country's emergence as a continental power. In the aftermath of the Lewis and Clark expedition, the U.S. government began to establish a series of forts, trading posts, and settlements in the Western Territories, which helped to solidify American control over the region. The expedition's maps and journals played a crucial role in this process, providing valuable information about the region's geography, resources, and native inhabitants. As the United States continued to expand its territories, the legacy of Lewis and Clark remained a powerful symbol of American exploration and discovery, even as the consequences of their journey continued to unfold. The publication of Nicholas Biddle's edited version of the Lewis and Clark journals in 1814 helped to further cement the expedition's place in American history, providing a comprehensive account of the journey that would become a classic of American literature. The book's success was rapid, with multiple editions and translations appearing in the years that followed. As the legend of Lewis and Clark continued to grow, it inspired a new generation of explorers, scientists, and settlers who saw the Western territories as a land of opportunity and discovery. As we conclude the epic tale of the Lewis and Clark expedition, we are reminded that this pivotal moment in American history has left an indelible mark on the world. The courage, perseverance, and curiosity of these two explorers, along with their companions, paved the way for a new era of discovery, expansion, and transformation. Their journey not only reshaped the geography of the United States, but also forever altered the lives of Native American communities, sparking a complex and often fraught relationship that continues to unfold today. The legacy of Lewis and Clark serves as a powerful reminder of the profound impact that human exploration and ingenuity can have on the world. As we reflect on their journey, we are compelled to consider the ongoing consequences of westward expansion, including the displacement and marginalization of indigenous peoples, the exploitation of natural resources, and the reshaping of ecosystems. These events, though rooted in the past, continue to reverberate through our modern world, influencing contemporary debates about environmental sustainability, social justice, and cultural identity. As we navigate the complexities of our own era, we would do well to remember the lessons of Lewis and Clark's expedition. Their story teaches us about the importance of collaboration, adaptability, and respect for the unknown. It highlights the need for empathy, understanding, and reconciliation in the face of historical injustices. And it inspires us to embrace the spirit of discovery, to push beyond the boundaries of what is known, and to explore the uncharted territories of our own time. As we close this chapter on the Lewis and Clark expedition, we are left with a profound sense of awe, wonder, and responsibility. We are reminded that history is not merely a series of events, but a living, breathing tapestry that continues to unfold in the present. The stories of our past inform our decisions, shape our values, and inspire our aspirations. As we look to the future, we would do well to draw upon the wisdom, courage, and curiosity of Lewis and Clark, embracing the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead with a sense of hope, humility, and determination. Thank you for joining me throughout this historical journey. Until we meet again, I'm Herodotus, reminding you that history isn't just a story, it's our story. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, remember that to understand the present, we must first understand the past.